Hello and welcome to the Be Formless Flow Driven CEO podcast, where we are reshaping life, leadership, and business from the inside out. And I'm welcoming to the show from Dallas, Texas, whereby it is Sunday evening. Very kind of you to join Dana Garnett. No, Dana Garnett. What did I just say there?
You said it perfectly.
Thank you. Welcome to the show, Dana.
Thank you, B. It is lovely to be here.
Yeah.
And I really appreciate the opportunity to just chat, and eager to see where the conversation goes.
Absolutely. Well, this is take two, isn't it? I had to cancel on you last week, but I feel like it was, the right timing today to be talking all around what you do, which is absolutely fascinating. And I think we need more of this in the world, if I'm honest right now. So you are a credentialed advanced mediator. Love that. And a conflict resolution strategist, and you're the founder of Mindful Strategy. So you've been an advanced mediator, you said, for 12 years, or in conflict resolution, but you've had your company as a founder of Mindful Strategy 10 years young this month. So congratulations on
Yes,
having been in business
thank
for
you.
10 years. That's incredible. And whereby you help founders, family businesses, and trustee teams turn emotionally expensive conflict into clear operating rhythms. And I love that, emotionally expensive conflict, because I could imagine how expensive it could be at times.
Yes.
Yeah, so basically, so decisions can get made, relationships hold, and the business stays what I like to call in flow, right? Like that's what we need. Like that's when, if everything's in flow, everything feels a lot more effortless. You manage hard finance with human dynamics and work with Big Eights, the Fortune 100 companies. You work for the likes of Coca-Cola, the Coca-Cola company, and deep practice in civil and family mediation. I keep going to say meditation. I don't know what's going on there, but
I know it's just a switch of the two letters, right?
it is, and your work spans partner disputes, succession, and generational rivalries, from board C-suite standoffs and high-stakes negotiations, whereby you're teaching the practical real-time skills leaders can use under pressure. The bit I loved the most before I hand it over to you was when you answered my question when booking in for the pod, and that is, what's one unique insight or lived experience when it comes to life, leadership, and or business? And you said when it comes to human conflict dynamics, it only takes one person to shift the situation for the better. Tell us how
Yes.
you got into this. I love the mindfulness around it, or the mindful strategy. Yeah, I'm going to hand it over to you.
Okay. Well, thank you. And actually, just for a split second, it was a little echoey on the sound, but can you hear me okay?
Can hear you fine. It could have been me
Okay. Okay,
ruffling the
great.
paper that I had in front of me. It happens it
Oh,
happens.
no worries. Just to check. Yeah. So, but yeah, the one person thing. Um, Having mediated for years, and seen over and over again how, at least the mediations I've done in the state of Texas are court ordered, so that people are really kind of forced to the table. It's the
Yeah.
last straw before the judge can decide, for you. It's your last, it's the point of last control, if you will, over your own destiny. And if you can't settle, then the judge, will decide for you. And so, the challenge with that, though, is if you do settle, settlement is not real resolution. Time and time again, I would just see people leave, and that they've got something on paper that's a contractual obligation out of mediation to continue to live their lives with, but they still feel, resentful or angry or unsettled in some way. And
Yeah.
I know that from personal experience. I became a mediator because of a really bad divorce. And
Sorry about
I
that.
left Oh, that's okay. Thank you. Well, because of what I've learned within 18 months of that experience being over, that divorce being over and final, I was actually really over my divorce. So it's okay. I tell a story about it because I want to help other people not make, the mistakes or fall into the pits that I did along the way. But that said, I came out of it feeling really vulnerable and angry and resentful, and it's really easy to, carry that on with you and continue to blame the situation, the other person or persons. So what happened, long story, fast forwarding, I was working through my master's degree in dispute resolution, and started working with a family business advisor who for a time referred me some of his clients. And these were people that would come to me on their, or come to him and then to me on their own, saying, I'm the only person that gets this. If we don't fix XYZ problem in the family business, we could lose it, or we're going to
Yeah.
lose our biggest customer or our biggest vendor. And so I was coaching in conflict resolution. And so now kind of fast forwarding to today, from my years of experiences from mediation, I have created and fine-tuned a process where you don't need everybody around the table. And you can get real resolution. I mean, really get clear on whatever that conflict was, whether your partner or your partners or whomever you're dealing with wants to work with you on it or not. And it's what I call the mindful strategy. It's getting to the heart of
Yeah.
something very quickly and clearing the deepest triggers, no matter how long they've been there, and therefore neutralizing the situation where everybody feels heard, and therefore strengthening versus severing relationships. So it's heart, clear, neutralize, strengthen. And again, it's just one person who, if someone, let's put it this way, when you're in mediation, and especially if it's required, not everybody wants to be there.
No.
Most often nobody wants to be there. And so they're just going to sit there and say, okay, whatever, right? But when someone really wants to change, they really want something different to happen, because it's what I often talk about is that definition of insanity. You want something different to happen, a different
Yes.
outcome, but you're not doing
You
anything
keep doing the
different
same
to get
thing.
there.
You keep doing exactly the
Exactly.
same thing. Yeah. And you're like,
Exactly.
why
It's
isn't
like,
anything
when is this?
changing? Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Right. So when you do something different, you get a different outcome. And so my clients are primarily individuals who come and say, nobody gets this but me, or we're like this. Well, if you learn something new or show up, what I do is coach them in showing up differently.
Mm.
And so this stops because there's nothing to hit against anymore. The other
Yeah.
person, though, may never know that their partner got help from somebody. So they start to show up differently in the situation. And by that, I mean, I literally help them to process through whatever issues there are for themselves or with that other person, and help construct dialogue that they start using a different form of communication that does just what I said a moment ago, neutralizes that situation and opens up that conflict, if you will, to a whole new outcome. And time again, this worked. And it started with me. I mean,
About to
or
say, was it
myself.
you lived experience that you were like, but you
Yes,
had to open your heart at the start because I've just been running down heart cleaning or clearing deepest
heart
triggers.
clear,
Yeah.
neutralize, strengthen.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And I did. I mean, when I was coming out of my divorce, um, and actually, if I had known the things I know now earlier, it would have taken me far less time to get past the divorce. But still, it was 18 months. And that was a relatively short amount of time, because a lot of people will talk about their divorce or some kind of business breakup as if it was yesterday, but it's been 20 years. They
Yeah.
still have some residual things
Yeah.
going on. So when I'm on my path to mediator, it was very cathartic. And I was, um, 22 term papers later, you start really getting into yourself. And I cleared a lot of stuff. And I also did a deep dive in the neuroscience of conflict,
Yes.
and got certifications in a couple of other modalities and brought that into my toolbox. And that's what helped me clear things for myself. And when I started showing up differently in past conflicting relationships, it shifted those dynamics. And I no longer judge the other person. I no longer held on to any kind of resentment that, I still wasn't happy about this or that, because ultimately, and this is kind of leaping to one of the principles of the mindful strategy, but it's like, what we don't realize, I think, sometimes, is everything we do is a choice.
Agree.
And
Mm.
when we come to realize the choices we made, even in the past, were our choices choices to get into a business partnership or a marriage or whatever, to stay, even if, if things are miserable, or to leave. Those are all choices. However, I often like to quote Maya Angelou. And
Yeah, she's
I may not have it
amazing.
exactly right, but yeah, but one of her great quotes, and maybe a variation of this, but we all do the best we can with what we know at the time.
Yeah.
If
I
we knew
always,
better, we'd do
yeah.
better.
Yeah, no,
And so it's not to have these discoveries like, oh my God, in the past I made these horrible choices. No, you did the best you could.
with what you've
So I
got.
spent a little time, exactly. I spent a little
I
time
always say you're
judging
doing the best
myself,
you,
but
yeah, I always say you're doing the best you can with what you've got, or they're doing the
yep,
best they can with what they have. So
yes.
when you are going, and I want to talk to you about the neuroscience of conflict actually, because I think it'd be really interesting because it obviously equates to this whole mindful piece. Because like when
Hmm.
you go head to head on something, like
Yep,
it's not getting you anywhere and you're just going to keep doing this. So what is that circuit breaker? And you've obviously got your mindful strategy, right? But even when it comes to the realization, if you're still going at this, but you're wanting to evolve, or you're kind of doing the work, the inside out work, and they're
right.
stuck, the more you just keep going
Yep,
like that, you have to get to a point where they're doing the best they can with what they've got. They're not going to be, they're not, they don't want to evolve. They're not going to. I'm just using that as an example,
yep.
but do you know what I mean?
I do. No, you're entirely right. I mean, at the end of the day, we cannot control anybody else,
No.
right? We can't control anyone's behaviors, and what they think, say, or do, no more than they can control us. And so when we begin to recognize that, or have this new awareness that we can't control other people, all we can really control is our own responses to things,
Mm,
and what we feel, what we need. And in doing so, we, in that spirit of they're doing the best they can, with what they know. And when you have processed something through and you now know how to communicate in a different way, and by that, it's like there's a very specific word choice and a very specific order at a very specific moment that makes all the difference
yeah.
in this. This is those word choices and how you show up when. And this, it starts the other person will start to respond differently because
Yeah.
you're showing up differently.
Yeah.
And there will be a period. A lot of my clients will, they get through. I have an 8-week program for people that are really dealing with some intense conflict, and I have a compressed version of that as a fast track 3-week version, if you will, for business owners and professionals who want to just upskill their conflict resolution and communication tools, if you will. But anyway, the my clients will often say, you know, several weeks into the work, you know, people are looking at me going, "What's up with you?" Because if you've been doing this, that other person who's still, in that conflict mode may even comment and say, "What's up with you?" And sometimes, my client will they'll always say, "What do I say?" I said, "Well, if you want to divulge that you're getting conflict coaching, and you feel comfortable doing that,
Mm,
you can say that. But under some circumstances, they don't want to say that because it's private coaching, and if they want to keep it
yeah.
private, that's fine." So what I tell them is just, simply say, "Oh, that. Well, I've been doing a lot of reflection on myself and realize that maybe I don't always go about things the right way. And so I've just been kind of trying to be more aware of that. So that might be what you're picking up on,
Mm,
and that's kind of generally what's happening, but it's not, because sometimes if they were to tell their partner, well, I went and got coaching because you are such a problem, right? It's like, we don't want to go there because that's just going
yeah.
to exacerbate the problem, right? So, but by that time, they actually wouldn't say that by that time because they're beginning to
Yeah.
realize, okay, I can't control anybody. Don't judge. It's going to come back on you if you do. It's, all these things. But that's often what I let, because that'll happen. It happened with me. It's like, what's up with you? There's something different. It's
Yeah.
almost like they're waiting for that shoe to drop again. Okay, you seem like you're chill now, but when's it going to happen again that you blow up? And if you don't ever do that older behavior again, they start to get comfortable with that. And it's like, okay, and it has a whole new vibe now. That
So
whole
do you think,
relationship can
yeah,
change.
I love it. And it's
Yeah.
almost for me, it's like a pattern interrupt, right? Like it's almost like the amygdala and the amygdala going head to head.
Oh,
And then
totally.
and
Yes.
then the other and like then for example you come in from a you block you put the amygdala that's blocked out and the prefrontal cortex kicks on in. It's like no, I'm going to approach this completely different. Like it's a newer part of the brain, you've got
Yes.
the older part of the brain.
Yes.
So the older
Yeah.
part's then got this new part of the brain going. So me being the older part, you being the new part,
Yep.
me older part's going, ah, I want to just do this. I want to tell you, and the new part's going, oh no, I'm going to be more emotional or more rational or come at it in a different way.
Yep.
And so then you have
Exactly.
this completely different. And so then the
Yeah.
amygdala does just get kind of pushed to the back because it can't win in this instance. And so it's
Yeah.
like, oh. So then me, as with the amygdala, is basically saying, I've got to do this differently too then because this isn't working anymore the way it was. And so then
Yeah.
I jump
Yeah.
into the prefrontal, like, like I'm just sorry, I'm
Yes.
just
Yes.
like,
No, I love it. No, I mean, I can geek out on this stuff. It's like this is the amygdala is it's it's I want to say it's all in a way it's all about the amygdala because we
it
respond to
is.
each other, fight, flight, freeze, right? But when you show up in a certain way that doesn't challenge or put someone on the defensive, and sometimes we're it's well intended, but however we're showing up, we may not realize that what we're saying is triggering things, but yes, I mean, the neuroscience piece is that when you, for yourself, when you process through something very specifically, and you now know well, first of all, let's start with the processing. You process through something, and I mean, using a very specific example of an issue, and clear that in the process moment, you're literally rewriting neural pathways,
Yeah,
your own. And then when you take that constructed dialogue from and when the results of the process, you have now dialogue and a vocabulary to work with that you put together. And when you're delivering that to the other person who may still be, ready for the fight, the way you are saying it relaxes the amygdala. It literally, that's you nail it on the head. It relaxes their amygdala, or it relaxes the reaction of their amygdala to where they're now they feel less threatened, and they're more open and more likely
to resolve.
to hear your side.
Yes.
You
And
know,
it's
and they're and again, you can, if it comes up that this is what you were learning, great. If it's something you don't want to share that you're learning, but and it doesn't matter. It's like, you can show up this way and no one ever even knows what you're doing, but it has a profound result,
no,
and it's,
yeah,
yeah,
I
yeah.
love it.
Like,
And
you're it's internal transformation for you. And then you're helping to transform the relationship. And this helps, I tell you what, B, time and time again, what it does. I've seen this with my clients. Sometimes they come in and they know exactly what the outcome that they want, and that may work in that direction. But sometimes they get certain ahas, takes them in a totally different direction. And it's like what they think they want
it's very
out of a
different.
resolution with this person may be very different than what shows up eventually, but that's okay. And going back to neuroscience, a lot of this is you're seeking your own insights from within. And one thing I don't do is advise people, because as a mediator, we are trained to guide someone or the parties through a process where we may make some suggestions here and there, but it's
Their
their
choice.
it's their mediation, their choice, and they sign on that dotted line if they get a settlement agreement. Same thing, I carry the same mediator ethics when it comes to neutrality and not advising. I carry that into my conflict resolution coaching, and so I take them through this process that I've pulled together and refined. And what comes out of that is I'm guiding them to access their own insights.
Yeah, I love it. And
And
it's
yeah,
it's transforming them as a person too, right? They quite often come with own, like I was saying to you pre-show when I had my own inner conflict or my own, I was talking about
Yeah.
loading my days up and everything. We were just talking, and
Yes,
we
yes.
have our own conflict, and on top of the
Mhm.
conflict we have like it's like the inside out conflict, if you like, and you'll have
It is.
conflict
I
from
mean,
within and then the
yes,
conflict outside, and it's just this cycle that just keeps
yes.
going and going and going, like you say.
Yeah.
I have a
Yeah, yeah,
question.
and that's sorry. The internal conflict is real,
Oh,
and oftentimes people they'll come for help with some conflict with someone else, but they'll discover
it's them.
there's been something
Yeah.
within themselves too that they maybe didn't even know or help you clear that, and it's just such a weight off. Anyway, go ahead. Yeah.
Yeah, and then it comes back to being like whole, and I think about mindful and whole. It's like coming back to that whole self, and that ability
Yeah.
to, and like you say, I've got this question for you. Someone many years ago said to me, a bit of a guru, but and he was integrated medicine at the time. This was many
Hmm.
years ago, not my current, but a doctor that I see. And I do love all that integrated and holistic, when it comes to leadership in life and business and everything else. And he did say to me many years ago, I think when I was probably in like that real, you know, inner conflict and going on my own journey of that, but he did say to me, you need to complete things in life, and I'll never forget it. And the reason I'll tell you why I'm bringing this up, but it's like, when it comes to mediation or conflict resolution, you said at the start of the show or earlier in when we first started talking around that, you can get to a resolution and quite often people are jaded, peeved off, like they're not at peace, they're not at one with themselves.
Right.
And so
Right.
my question to you is like, from a mindful strategy perspective and from a mindful piece, is the ultimate aim to complete, like have it complete so that you can walk away from whether you're in mediation or resolution and almost just be like, it's completed. Like there's nothing more I need to do with that so that I can move into the next phase of my life or whatever. Like, do you believe that
Mhm.
like it is a whole completion? Like, yeah.
Yeah, I think when it comes to mediation, at least where I practice it here, um, it's well, you go literally across the United States, state to state has a different approaches to mediation. Most of the ones I've done is where the parties are, for perhaps legal reasons or whatever, but the parties are kept apart
Yeah.
and trying to get them together in the same room, which is what alternative dispute resolution mediators want to try to do. It's not always easy, but that said, you're trying to work with the legal system, right? But at the end of the day, even if I've got somebody, a business partners or a couple I'm working with in the mediation, um, if it's just a day you have with them or even a couple of days, you can't get that far that fast.
No.
When I talk about um, getting real resolution fast and for good, fast within a month or two, you can clear through years of complex conflict, generational, whatever, but it takes a little time, but if you've been at it 5, 10, 20, 40 years, whatever, a couple of months is pretty quick, to be able to clear it and move on.
100%. Yeah.
In mediate, yeah, right. But in mediation, this is why I started doing, actually today I do more conflict coaching than I do mediations because mediation doesn't allow for it. There are three issues with mediation. One, it comes, at least in Texas, comes way too late in the legal process.
Mm.
Everyone's been trying to dig in and find out the truth and kill each other over it. And now let's mediate. It's the very
Yeah.
last minute. It's like that's just too late. Secondly, as I mentioned earlier, people are kind of forced to sometimes feel forced into mediation,
Yeah.
and so it's not really open. They're not open to it. And thirdly, it's not. I mean, it's not supposed to be, and if it isn't. There's no opportunity to impart conflict resolution skills to those people.
Mm.
So they do inevitably walk away with something that they
Incomplete.
didn't quite get resolved. And in
Yeah.
fact, I've had I've had attorneys say to me, if people walk away from a mediation saying, "Ugh, I didn't quite get what I wanted," which is what I was told, that's a good mediation. And I thought to myself, that's what I've got to look forward to.
No,
You know,
because you
like,
haven't, then you've got this inner conflict. There's nothing,
yes,
there's, for me, there's nothing's resolved.
no,
You've got this
exactly.
energy, you've got bad everything going on.
Yeah, yeah.
And
And everybody in your life, there's that knock-on ripple effect.
yeah,
They have it. And then what happens is you take that unresolved conflict
with you.
into the next
Yeah,
business,
yeah,
partnership or marriage, and you wonder, why does the same thing keep happening to me?
yeah. So such a good point.
Because you haven't cleared it. And so that's why I love the coaching side, because people come with a lot of stuff. I had a lot of stuff, but when you clear it, you start showing up differently. You don't need anybody else with you to do
No,
that. So that therein lies real resolution. But you have to have, going back to Maya Angelou, we don't have these skills. We're not taught this stuff in school, MBA programs, whatever, companies. Social emotional intelligence skills is what we're talking about basically here. That's neuroscience stuff. It's not taught.
no,
And
it's
so if we, so it's like there's help, but there's not, it's still trickling out there to the public.
yeah.
Um,
It's very new, isn't
but
it? Isn't it, Dana? It's very new in terms of like the neuroscience behind it, and how it can solve so much when it comes to business, when it comes
yes,
to life, when it comes
yes,
to leadership. I know
yeah,
that we're, I've got to watch the time and the clock, etc.,
right, yes,
because it is
yeah,
summer evening for you. But a couple of quick questions for you in terms of just, you obviously work with different, you work with generational, you work with like partner, but like, can we just talk a little bit about like what you see in terms of from a business perspective? Like, is it, in the board standoffs or the C-suite standoffs, is it generally like, what do you, like, I think I said to you pre-show, the world is in a state of flux, as we know. Are you seeing more common issues today versus, say, 2 years ago? Like, are you noticing, or is it always down to financial? Like, what are you generally seeing when in a,
right,
yeah, business setting?
yeah. No, it's a great question. Honestly, even though the world seems to be in a lot of turmoil today, when it comes down to the business owners or professionals I work with, because I also, side note, I extended my practice last year to professionals like trustees
Yeah,
or financial advisors or exit planning strategists who work with clients where they see
yeah,
the
internally.
conflict that's affecting their clients.
Yeah,
And I've been asked to be brought into, or they ask, can you go help them? And I'm like, if they're not asking for the help, it's not going to be helpful. It's not going to land. But I work with those professionals and help them show up communication wise with their clients differently. That
yeah,
helps resolve those conflicts. So anyway, so regardless of whether it's owners or whomever, the conflict I see, honestly, is just human dynamic conflict that really hasn't changed
mm,
over these years. And even though the world is in such a turmoil, I mean, just to be, um, more direct about it, I don't like political differences is not, I don't see a lot, people aren't arguing or in conflict for that. They're arguing over long-term business strategy or their operation, their business
yeah,
model,
right.
operating procedures, who to fire, who not to fire, who's going to take over the business, um, who's going to take over the next board seat. I mean, it's really more that that human
Yeah,
dynamic conflict that's
fascinating.
inevitable, right? And it's something that um, it's not trying to avoid conflict. What I try to convey to people is not about avoiding conflict, because we're human. We're going to interact and
Always.
bounce
Yeah,
off of each other, right? Different opinions, judgments, philosophies, but so it's trying to avoid the escalation of unnecessary conflict.
mm,
And when it's gotten a little too heated, and now you're losing time, money, resources,
yeah,
people, clients, vendors who, it's like when that loss starts to hit, that's when we got to do something different. So did I help answer the question?
It
That,
did, and there's
it's
now
just,
there's yeah. So, and then in terms of, do you ever go into a business as a mediator? Do you ever just go into business, or do you ever go into, whether it's not even a business, generational, like a generational rivalry, or a partner dispute, or like from a conflict resolution sense, do you ever go into these situations where you're like, this is unresolvable, like whatever, no matter what you try or whatever you do? Like, this
yeah,
is kind of like the opposite of like the neuroscience behind it, right? Where it's just like some people just aren't going to change. Like, coming back to what we were talking about before, like, do you ever
yeah,
just have to make the call that nothing I do, say, guide, how I assist is going to
right.
change this?
Yeah. That's also a great question. Actually, um, it's going to sound like maybe crazy, but actually there isn't any kind of conflict that can't be resolved.
I
I
was
mean,
hoping you
nothing
would
is
say
in,
that. I was
nothing,
hoping,
yeah,
yeah.
nothing's impossible. What it takes, though, is for someone to really want something different. It goes back to that
Yes, yeah. No, I was hoping
definition
you'd
of
say that.
crazy or insanity, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Honestly, no, there isn't a situation where there isn't some shift, and every one of my clients, who have come, and I'm very, I'll say this too. I'm careful. I'm going to say selective, but I'm careful who I take on as a client,
Yeah.
because, and I can quickly see if there's just, it's lip service, and they just, yeah. But let me tell you about this person. In fact, I had one experience. One, I was brought in to a company, and um, the owner, when I got there, I was hired to come in for a day of facilitation between two people in the business. And when I got there, he said, I need to let you know, I don't like this other person. And I need you to tell them that they're going to be leaving the organization. And I said, that's not what I do.
No.
I do not do that. But despite that, by the end of that day, we were in a conference room, and those two people, they had gotten down to the heart of what the issue was. It went like 8 years back, and like one person said, what, you were upset I'd said that? Yeah. All this time? Yeah. And before we were finished, the owner of the company's in the room. There's a whiteboard full of new operating ideas for the new
I love it.
procedures I got to roll out, and
Mm.
how to communicate with the client and the staff. And he's like almost not happy. In fact, he wasn't happy because the two, like there was no conflict now,
Yeah.
right? It was like it had all been diffused, but and he was just, but that, again, I don't judge him in that context of he's doing the best he can with what he knows. But it's, that was the one time, but even still, there was something resolved, you know. So yeah, anything's possible. No,
I
there's no
love that
conflict that
anything's
can't be
possible.
resolved.
My
Yeah,
very
yeah.
final question for you, AI. So AI's here, and there's
Love it.
lots.
AI's, yes, among us. I love it. Yeah, I use
I
it
love
too.
it
Go
too.
ahead.
It's among us, and there's also amongst us. And then there's also, obviously humans, and there's always going to be conflict, and there's always going to be a need to resolve the conflict from a human to human. Have you thought about also then how the role AI plays in any of this, or like does it become another part of like, because like I was saying to someone the other day, it just sounds ridiculous, but I was having conflict with AI because it was kind of literally having a hallucination and having a go at me. And I was going head to head with it. Then it was coming back at me, and then I'm like, oh well, I've got to stop. Like this is just
Yeah,
like, so we've got this other thing in the equation now, like beyond the
yeah,
humans,
yeah,
because
yeah.
do you know what I mean? And like, so that's
I do.
another
Yeah,
layer of, because I don't know, you may have already had people come up to you going, well, chat's told me this, or this has told me this. And then it's like there's this another dynamic coming into the equation with humans.
right. Yep, exactly. I love that. Okay, so two things. One, mediators are going through this too. We're being told that, oh, AI is going to be able to read the emotions off of someone's face and tell you what they're feeling, you know, and what, yes, that's probably possible to an extent, but a lot of people have a really good poker face,
Mm.
you
Mm.
know, and will not necessarily disclose it. And so what we're seeing as mediators, but also is in the coaching world, is that AI can it's a database, right? It's pulling from a database, and it gets smarter and smarter. Yeah, but it's not. It doesn't. It in some regards, I've actually heard AI experts say it's never going to have the intellect
No.
of the human psyche, because
Yeah.
there's nothing like human connection.
Yeah.
And whereas AI can advise you on things and all of that, what AI can't do is be present in the moment when you're, engaging with
Yeah.
someone. And just another example, I had a client was facing a situation, well, because she got some clarity around this, she was going to be shutting down a part of the business and had to deliver a message to employees about this, right? And she, before we got on a call to work through what that communication was going to be, she said, just for fun, I threw it into Chat GPT. Well, Chat GPT wrote this page and a half, how to deliver a message, that we're going to close this section down. And there was one phrase that had empathy in it, real empathy. The
Mm.
whole thing started with, you know, you know, going to be announcing, we're announcing this, sorry about that, but the reason we're doing it is all about the company, all about
Yeah.
the company.
No
And then it's like,
soul.
we're so sorry for what this might be doing to you. That's like in
Yeah.
summary, right?
No,
Instead, what we came up with right off the bat, we're going to be closing this division, and you go right into, I can only imagine how you might be feeling worried and
yeah,
concerned
so true.
about hearing this, because you have a need for job security.
Mm.
And I'm going to tell you that, we are going to be making sure that we're going to help you, in getting outplacement and all of that. Then you can say, there are, you don't even go into the reasons. Like,
Yeah.
many reasons I could share with you about why this is happening, but I realize, that's really neither here nor there. What matters is what you're going through with this, in this process. And I want to assure you, I'm here to help as best I can in this difficult situation. So you see the difference,
Yeah, it's
whether,
communication, right? It's down to
yes,
empathetic, and it's soul. I call it, it's soulful. It's got soul. It's
it,
conscious. It's got soul.
yes,
Not,
yes, yes,
oh my
yes.
gosh, you and I could
Yeah,
keep having this
I
conversation.
know. I know, definitely.
Dana,
Yes. We're going to have to,
if anyone was having any form of conflict resolution, whether it's in their business or in life, or kind of from a leadership perspective this week, what would be one little piece of advice you would give them to think, like when it comes to choice or doing it differently? Like if we think about the neuroscience, what would be one piece of advice you would suggest that where they start?
right. I would say, take into consideration, excuse me, take into consideration your contribution to the situation.
Mm.
And, you know, is there a point where, you said something, did something that perhaps the other person, it was reasonable that they would respond that way? That would be one thing. The other would be that, keeping in mind that, the person you're dealing with, that conflict, they're doing the best they can. And if you can possibly look at them without judgment or assumption or opinion, and just try to guess what it is that's important to them, and lead with that when you speak to them, rather than, hey, I'm upset you said that, and I want to talk about it. That's going to put them on the defensive. If you say instead, hey, when you said that, I wondered if you were feeling anxious,
Mm.
because we're not as far along in this project as we need to be, and you're worried about the delivery.
Mm.
Would that be, and acknowledge them? Would that be, ask, would that be right? And whatever they tell you, acknowledge it
Yeah.
and say thank you. It's like whatever they say, just say, that's great to know, thank you. At the same time, I've been feeling really concerned as well. and I felt like we weren't on the same page here, but is how do you see the way forward? And make it, oh, here you go, B. This is, boil it all down to this. Make it about the thing, not the people.
Yeah, it's never personal. I always say that. It's never personal.
Right. Make it about the issue you're trying to resolve
Yes.
together, not you're the issue.
Yeah.
Right.
Back to
So
this.
is that
Back to this.
helpful?
Yeah, no, it was. And for me, it's
Yeah.
communicate with positive intent or feedback with positive intent. It's always got to have a positive intent
Yes.
to it. Do you know what I mean? Like
Yes. Yes.
you can still provide feedback, but do it with a positive intent. I love
Yeah.
it. Oh my gosh,
Yeah.
Jenna, such a great conversation. Thank you so much. How do we find
It's
out more
been,
about you? How do we find out more? How do we get in touch if we do need to, get some conflict resolution coaching,
yep.
mediation?
Yes, thank you. There are two ways. One, my website is mindfulstrategy.com, and there's an option to click on a consultation, which is it's free. It's just to see if I'm even the right person for your situation. Another way is LinkedIn. Just
Yeah.
look me up on LinkedIn and connect, and send me a message, and we can reach out to each other that way too. So,
Amazing.
yeah,
I loved it. Thank you
yeah.
so much. It's good to know. And yeah, have a wonderful rest of the evening and a great week ahead. Thank you so much, Dana.
Thank you, B. I so appreciate it.
No.
Will we be able to stay on for a second after
Yes,
we
we
finish
will.
our?
Yes, I'm
Okay,
going to just
perfect.
thank
Great. Good.
you.
Okay.